Hi, my name is Aaron, this is my show Reeducation, and we need to abolish money. Yeah, you heard me correctly. We need to get rid of it because there's no reason for it to exist. It in fact doesn't help us any longer, it hinders us. And I know a lot of people out there are asking themselves, abolish money? I mean, how could that even be possible? Money is basically like gravity. We can't just abolish gravity. That's something that exists infinitely. It always has existed and it always will. Well, with money, that just simply isn't the case. Millions of years went by without us ever having any form of currency. In fact, right now is the only time in history with the anomaly of us actually having it. It is a social construct. So what is money? I mean, we all know that it can be exchanged for goods and services, but what actually is it? I know at one point in history it used to be based or was a commodity resource, something like gold or silver, but today, what exactly is money? It's a fiction. It's nothing. It's a spook. I mean, yes, at one point in time, our money was created out of something that was useful, but now all it is a state-authorized document. It's just a piece of paper that we clap and hope and pray that it actually means that it's worth something, but really, it's only worth whatever value we decide to assign to it. You can see this with things as simple as inflation. A dollar doesn't have nearly as much buying power as a dollar did 50 years ago. That's because there's more money in the market. You're making more money, but goods are costing more money. So there's more money in the market, and it doesn't mean anything. It just means that more paper dollar bills are going to have to be exchanged for the same good. It's arbitrary. It's meaningless. It's nonsense. So what are the flaws of having money? I mean, there are many, but I'm going to cover only a few. It can be hoarded. That's pretty fucking obvious. Money can be hoarded by anyone who's able to collect money. And if money is basically the determining factor on who gets access to what services, then that means that people that have the most money are going to have the access to the most services and not the people that need the most. So some banker that has millions of dollars has access to all of the healthcare and medicine they need, whereas a family that has, 3 or 4 children and they're working a minimum wage job have no access to healthcare. That doesn't really make sense. I think that everybody should have the same access to all of the same services, and not just a select few because they happen to be born in the lucky sperm club with a big fucking bank account. Our system creates such vast inequality that the richest person in the world, Jeff Bezos, makes something like $17 billion and could literally buy every single homeless person in the United States a house and still be one of the richest people in the world. But he doesn't, because that is not what we're incentivized to do. We're incentivized to accumulate more money for ourselves. The third problem is that it can be inherited. Inheriting wealth means that somebody 100 years ago may have been able to do some sort of shady deal to get millions or billions of dollars, and you just being born allows you to have access to all of that wealth, all of those resources, even though you didn't do anything to deserve it. Now, when you're talking about inheritance, we're talking about a massive estate. I'm not talking about simple things like the old shotgun that your grandfather used to use on bear, or maybe some heirloom that your mother had, like a jewelry box or something like that. I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about the means of production. Those are physical items. Those are things that can actually have sentimental attachment. We're talking about a large amount of money. So because of nepotism and birthright, a small few people get to own all of the good land and all of the resources, and the rest of the world gets to suffer because they just continuously pass down the means of production to their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren, so the wealth continues to grow in the hands of that small minority. Something like 60% of the wealthiest individuals got there through inheritance. And as I said before, it incentivizes us to personally enrich ourselves. We're not incentivized to enrich the rest of the community or the rest of the world. Oh no, we're incentivized to only gain more wealth for ourselves. That's what happens when you basically gamify the economy. When you make it so that the person that has the most wealth gets the most goods, then people are going to try to manipulate the system and find ways to beat the system, like a game, so they can accumulate the most goods or the most wealth. That incentivizes people to personally enrich themselves so they can win. It's a game that people are trying to win. And finally, probably the biggest problem with money today is it severely limits economic growth. It makes it incredibly difficult for us to actually grow our economy. Well, that doesn't make sense. What do you mean by that? Money is basically the economy, and over time we always see that money gets accumulated, so that must mean that the economy is doing better, and no. The economy is severely limited by money because we have to do things like wait for it to accumulate before we can fix things. It isn't enough for our society that we already have all of the tools, equipment, resources, and workers there to do something like fix the roads or fix the plumbing or fix the bridges. Instead, we have to wait for money to accumulate so we can buy those machines and that equipment and pay those workers and get the resources to fix that road. You can't just do things. You need to accumulate money first to do them. That's just an arbitrary step, a barrier that stops us from being able to actually do things. And it turns out that the structure is already capable of abolishing it entirely. Like I said at the start of this video, money doesn't really exist. It's just a figment, a spook, an imaginary thing that has no intrinsic value. It's just paper, or, in our case, now, not even paper. It's digital. For the most part, 90% of your day, if you're like anybody else, you just tap a card, or even tap your cell phone, and money is taken from your bank account and given in exchange for goods. It's already basically not even in our lives, and yet we are still bound by this non-physical, imaginary number on a screen. It doesn't make any fucking sense, now does it? I mean, the structure is already there. Stores already keep track of supply and demand. We can already extract, refine, distribute, consume, and recycle all of the goods that we produce with basically no money involved. Imagine this as a bit of a thought experiment. You wake up in the morning and you go to work. You work for a few hours during that day, and after work you leave and you go to the store. You get from the store all of the groceries and necessities that you may need throughout the week, and as you're leaving, you stop at the gas station and you fuel your car. After you go there, you leave and go home to your family, and you make yourself dinner, and you eat it with your family. And not $1 needed to be exchanged to do any of that. It already doesn't need to be exchanged right now. All money is, as I stated a minute ago, is just an arbitrary barrier that stops you from being able to do the things that you need to do in life to succeed. And if you eliminate that barrier, then you open the opportunity up to everyone, and not just a select few that were able to hoard and inherit it. And what are the immediate benefits that come from eliminating money? Well, the obvious one is that people can actually afford to get the things that they need in life to survive, like clothing, food, shelter, all of those sorts of things. And then after that, they even get to appeal to their higher needs, like getting the shoes that they like, or the video game systems they really enjoy playing, or the canvases that they want to paint their paintings on. And in doing that, they are stimulating the economy. That's right. It turns out if people need things, then you're going to need to produce them. And if more people are able to have access to Xboxes and paintings and TVs and whatever, then you're going to need to produce more Xboxes and TVs and paintings and whatever. That's what stimulates the economy, not holding it back by having an arbitrary barrier that stops you from able to get those things. And I'll take it one step further to something even more important. It's actually able to eliminate the barrier between you and your education, the one that you've always wanted, the one that would help you get your dream job. I mean, I always wanted to be a helicopter pilot or maybe work at NASA, but I could never do that because I could never afford the schooling. So I had to settle for something second rate. But if I didn't have to pay for it, well, I would be able to be a helicopter pilot right now. Or maybe I might be able to be someone that works at NASA. Probably a janitor because I'd never be smart enough to pass the schooling. But it would mean that people who actually want to be in those positions would have every opportunity to be. We would have people that are the most passionate, the most reliable, and have the most desire to do that thing actually doing that thing. They would be the ones that loved it the most, and we wouldn't be stopping them by telling them that it's too expensive. People ask the most absurd questions when you bring up the idea of abolishing money, like, how would people be incentivized to work? We would just want to sit around playing video games all day long and not doing anything. Okay, what about when that gets boring? What about when you've played every video game that you can think of and you've sat on your ass the entire time not doing anything? What then? Do you just waste the rest of your life doing nothing? Or do you have passions, or dreams, or desires, things in life that you aspire to do or be? Or if you want to be a firefighter, or an astronaut, or an engineer, or an artist, then you actually could be those things. Or if you really loved just sitting on your ass playing video games, then maybe we could give you a job reviewing video games or test running new ones. Video games are a booming market. We need lots of people to test them. And since we'd be getting rid of all the bullshit jobs that deal with things like money, then there will be a lot more people to do the actual jobs that are necessary in society. So you would get a lot more free time to just do whatever. And then we wouldn't have to be in competition with machines fighting over a job that we would need to have so we could survive. Instead, machines could help us. They could make our lives easier. And all of us would be incentivized to make sure that machines did take our jobs, because it would open our free time up to doing whatever we wanted to do. The less physical labor that you and I have to do as human beings means the more free time we have to spend with our family and friends, and actually enjoy our lives, take meaning out of it. That's the way that an actual society should function. And it doesn't need money to do that. In fact, money is holding us all back. It's making things more difficult. And in the revolution, there's no need for us to ever have money again. At least that's the way I look at it. If you do get a chance, please check out my Patreon. Every dollar does help fund this show. And this is my show, Reeducation. Thanks for watching.